Hello, everyone. A very good morning or good afternoon. First of all, thank you very much for setting some time apart amidst your busy schedule and joining us here for this webinar. Let me tell you something first. Your participation means a lot to us here, so thank you once again. We've been receiving a good number of registrants for this webinar, so which means that it still goes on to show that people are really interested in AD security, which was not the case in 2017 or years before that. So starting from later part of 2017, people are now really focusing on AD security too. So today, this webinar is going to be a three-part webinar series. So today is day one of the three-part webinar series. Tomorrow, same time, and day after tomorrow, same time, we'll be discussing about three various topics. So day one, it's all about AD and Office 365 security. Day two, management. Day two, it's all about Windows auditing. So how do you audit your Windows infrastructure? Because we've been getting a lot of questions from administrators, especially the not so nice auditors. I'm just kidding, sorry. So auditors want to know in-depth answers to who, what, when, and where of their Active Directory infrastructure. So what are the key events that you should be auditing? And what are these common events that you should be focusing on in your infrastructure? Now, day three, we'll be talking about SIM, because it's not just Windows in an environment. So you have your applications, you have your databases, you have your non-Windows components like your Linux, Unix boxes. So how do you audit all that and get meaningful information? I'm not talking about getting bombarded with 100 emails a day. I'm talking about how do you get meaningful information from all those components in your infrastructure. All right. Now let me do some basic housekeeping stuff here, even before I jump into the topic. So I guess it's not too late for that. I just wanted to perform a quick AV check. I see we have a lot of participants joining in. I just wanted to make sure that you hear me good and you also see the screen the way it is supposed to be shown. So if you could just send a quick yes or everything is fine using a chat window that you have in your GoToWebinar panel, I'd be more than happy so that I'll be able to start my session right away. So I'm just going to spend the next few seconds in getting to know that everything is fine, even before we jump into the topic. All right, so I'm waiting for a yes from your side. So if you could just type a yes or everything is fine, I'd be more than happy. All right, let's just take a look at this. Oh, there you go. There you go. A river of yeses. Thank you very much. Means a lot. Let's get started. Now everything is fine here. So before introducing the topic, it is a ritual that the speaker needs to be introduced so that you get at least to know that you're listening from someone who has been in the field and who has been dealt with some stuff and not just some sales pitch. All right. My name is Vivin Satyan. I'm a technical consultant in the Active Directory team here at ManageEngine, and I've been with ManageEngine for over 7.5 years now almost. So I do two things as a technical consultant. First thing is on-the-field consultation, which is I actually visit organizations, talk to IT directors, IT administrators, who I call my firefighters, because they are the ones who do the heavy lifting when it comes to securing an organization. So I get to talk to all of them, and I also get to implement some of the Active Directory solutions that we have and Office 365 solutions that we have. So that's one part of my job role. The second part is I actually get to travel the world, okay, which means I get to talk to administrators from various parts of the world, and I get to know some of their problems, okay, of course, technical problems. Now, what does that mean to you? Okay, fine, Vivin, you're traveling the world, all that is fine, but what does it mean to me? If that's your question, when I talk to an administrator somewhere in Australia or somewhere in India, somewhere in London or somewhere in Singapore, so they gave me some of their problems, and most of the times the problems are common. And you know why? Because the technology, Active Directory and Office 365 are common. So when the technology is common, the problems could be common too. I'm not saying all of them, but at least majority of them. So with that little bit of experience in hand, I have today created a slide deck for you with those common problems and solutions to those common problems. Okay. Now, disclaimer: this session is not going to be completely about the product, which is AD Manager Plus, the one that I'm going to be talking about. Even if you are not using the product, you're using another tool or you're using PowerShell, I would still confidently go on to say that the tips or the action items that I'm going to be suggesting today can be put to use in any scenario. Okay, even you're using AD Manager Plus or not using AD Manager Plus. That's how I've designed the slide deck to be. Now, I know that we have a lot of questions already in the panel. I see that. Now, I give you my word. I'll do my best to get back to those questions live. If not, trust me, I'll get back to you via emails. All right. So I have all your emails and I have your questions. I'll get back to you via emails. And the deck will be shared with you as well. So you need not take notes, or you can just listen to it. Probably push me aside to another monitor so that I don't disturb you. You can just hear me. And if at all you feel interested in knowing what's going on the screen, then you can jump into the screen. Okay. Without any further ado, what are we going to discuss today? So we're going to be discussing about tips for managing AD and Office 365 for the next 45 minutes. Now, let me move on to today's agenda. I'm going to be talking about 4 topics related to AD and Office 365. Number 1, I'm going to be sharing some reports that I want you to be doing, okay, with or without scripting. Even the agenda says without scripting, but if you're more into scripting, then please, I just want you to have the conditions that I'm going to share with you in mind, and then you write a PowerShell script, okay? So what are the few important queries that I want you to generate out of your AD and Office 365? Number 2, how do you bring in some sort of standardization, okay? Because you have AD and you have Office 365, you have Azure AD with that. With all that in place, how do you bring in some sort of standardization? Because you do not want a user's credential to be looking something like X in Active Directory, and the same user's credential looking something like Y in your Azure or Office 365. Okay, or you have 2 users belonging to the same department having different set of permissions, and only God knows why. Okay, so if all that is something that you have been through, I'm not saying that's the case in all the organization, but at least a few. If all that is the case that you have been through, and you'd like to tidy up your Active Directory infrastructure and O365 a bit, so the second topic would be for you. Number 3, the favorite of most of the administrators out there in the world. Administrators would like to automate routine Active Directory and Office 365 tasks, okay? Something like cleaning up your AD, all right? Now, who wants to do that manually? It would be much more seamless and much more uniform if you have an automated process in place, and you get to define the process, okay? So how do you perform a cleanup? And how do you, as in when you recruit users, how do you have those accounts created, the Exchange mailbox, the Office 365 accounts created automatically, okay? But you decide how it should happen, and then you set it to automate. Number 4, it's all about delegation, okay? And there's a big difference between the way by which you delegate with Microsoft and the method that I'm going to suggest. Now, if you add a user to a security group, that's one way of delegating. If you add a user to that group, let's call it group number X or group name X. So whatever permissions that group X has, now the user belonging to that group also holds the same permission. That's an intrusive model, yes? Which means you elevate the user's right in Active Directory or O365 indirectly if you assign him to a group or a role, as we call it in O365. So how do you perform a non-intrusive delegation? All these 4 important aspects will be covered during my session. Now, before that, we'll have to look at a few options that we have from Microsoft. Now, what does Microsoft have to offer in order for us to manage, be it AD or Office 365? We have all these fantastic tools, fantastic offerings from Microsoft. So you have PowerShell, which is the most favorite tool of administrators, and then you have ADUC. We've been used to ADUC for at least 19 years now, and then we have the Admin Center. Oh my God. Now, this is the first time that Microsoft decided that we are going to give users a GUI, a graphical user interface for managing things in their platform, okay? We did not have a GUI for AD, Okay, all we had was AD, an Exchange Management Console and all that stuff. But this is the first time that Microsoft decided, all right, we'll give you something to better manage objects in Office 365, which is the Admin Center. And then you have Sky for Business, which I believe is nearing EOL. And then you have the Exchange Management Console. And the best part here, we have Event Viewer. Okay. Now, what does this do? As the name indicates, it helps you view events. What are events? Any action that takes place in Active Directory gets recorded in this viewer, especially the security log holds the events for who, what, when, and where. These are the tools. All right. But these tools have a problem, a small problem. I'm not saying something glaring, a minor problem. Okay. What is that problem? Okay. Okay. Don't get me wrong, fans of PowerShell, fans of Microsoft, don't get offended. I'm not saying Microsoft has not done a good job. No. All I'm saying is Microsoft has given us some wonderful tools that you can use day to day for performing any operations from A to Z. Okay. But they do have some problems. Let me share some of them with you. The confirmation messages that you get with the tools aren't very helpful. Okay. Okay. You don't trust me? Let me show it to you in real time. Okay, I'm just going to jump to my Active Directory infrastructure here, and this is the most favorite tool of a Windows administrator. Okay, some of you might not like it. You are forced to like it. I get it. Some of you are smiling now. I could see that. Now, if that's the case, my point here is if you have a script in place, let's do this. Let's ask Microsoft for some help for creating a new AD users. Okay, so I do get help new AD user. If I remember the commandlet right, I would be getting something in return, and let's see. Okay, it's still doing its thing, and I think it's thinking. So, oh, my bad, the spelling was right, was wrong. So I do get new AD user. Oh, there you go. When you do it right, Microsoft gets back to you with help. Okay. Now, this is a sample script. As you can see, this is just a syntax. This is not the exact script for creating accounts. Now, let's say I depend on this script for creating Active Directory accounts. Let's say I'm about to create 4 of them, all 4 of them belonging to different departments. Now, let's assume that I have all the other properties in place. 3 user accounts get created fine, and the 4th account failed for some reason. And I do not know what the reason is. So if I were to troubleshoot a script, okay, there you go, troubleshooting a script. There you go. All right. Okay. Yes. This looks to me something like Matrix. Okay. I'm not fully and I wouldn't call myself an expert in PowerShell, but I play with PowerShell a bit on the basic level. So for me, this tells me that there is a problem clearly, but this doesn't tell me what the problem is, right? It tells me category info, fully qualified error ID, and all that stuff, but it doesn't tell me whether I have a syntax wrong, or if the syntax is wrong, it doesn't tell me what the right syntax is. And if I try to do a report on my users or my permissions with PowerShell, formatting is okay, you know the whole story. Formatting is a bit of a pain. Okay. Now, with all this in picture, Microsoft did not even think of coming up with a GUI for on-prem AD. Only for Office 365, they have something in store. So we, as a company, as Manage Engine, thought, all right, now how do we actually introduce a tool that is going to be of help to administrators to better manage their AD, Office 365, Exchange, all that in one platform? How do we not say, okay, administrator, for this tool you have this credential, for another tool you have another credential? No. How do we make use of one tool and manage all your the entire Active Directory on-prem as well as your cloud infrastructure? Okay. When I say cloud, don't get me wrong, that's a wider term. I'm being more specific here. I'm referring to your O365 infrastructure. All right. Now, I told you I'll be talking about reports, automation, delegation, and how do you manage objects to bring in some sort of uniformity. Let's get started here. Reports. What is the first report that I'm about to share with you? The first report is something related to groups. Oh, don't we all have groups? Some of them troublesome, some of them friendly, and some of them you have no clue whether they are troublesome or not. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about two approaches with regards to groups here. The first approach is more of an investigative approach. You might not be using this on a daily basis, but I still feel that this would really be helpful. The first approach is an investigative approach. The second one is a general health check for groups. All right, let's jump right into my AD. Okay, now the investigative approach. Now, why does this call for an investigation? Now, I have this account. If you just take a closer look at my Active Directory infrastructure here, it says the name of the account is helpdesk-us, and by the description, the technician is a HDT. Now, what I've done here is I want this technician to do basic actions in Active Directory. So I just go to the member of tab and I make sure that the user is part of account creation, domain users, which is a default group, password reset, SQL basic access, and VPN access. All of these groups, I'm 100% sure, do not have two actions, delete and disable. These groups do not have those rights because I created these groups. I added the help desk user to these groups. Okay. Now, I have the habit of creating a report for my help desk technicians. So every Monday morning, I go to office, I get an email that says, okay, here's a report that gives you the list of actions done by your technicians. Now that report says my help desk account here has disabled 2 accounts in Active Directory and deleted 1 of them. Now, please, I'd like to register again. None of these groups have disable and delete rights. Now the problem is this console is missing a very vital piece of information, and that information is, all right, we all know that a user can be a part of a group, but we also know that a group can be a member of another group, which is called as group nesting, right? So for example, if I add a help desk technician to the help desk technicians group, and by mistake the help desk technicians group is linked to domain admins, now I have another extra administrator in my infrastructure. So you get the point? All I'm saying is not just the direct groups that you have to consider when you're investigating a user's permission. How did this user get that right? The answer is not always with the direct groups. The answer is, or the answer could be in the nested groups. So I am going to do a nested group report. I'm logging into AD Manager Plus, right? This is the tool. Some of you might be using it, or some of you might be new to the tool. Or if you're using PowerShell scripting, please remember to use nested queries, okay? So I go to the reporting section here. All right. So when I go to reports, all I do is I first generate one report, which I feel is really crucial. So I go to the reports category, in which we have close to 200 reports here, all of them LDAP based. Now what I do here is in the reporting section, in the left-hand side, you have everything clearly categorized. User, password reports, reports on, you have a separate tab, dedicated tab for Office 365, under which you have reports for that too. So you have other reports, security reports, reports on GPOs. Fantastic. Now, the one that I'm going to use here is, I'm going to find out the actual groups for the user. Why do I say that this is the actual group for the user? Because please take a look at the category here, nested reports. All right, so this is going to give me the actual group for users. So I go to groups for users here, and what I do here is I pick the user, or the help desk-us account. Okay, I'm sorry, my system is acting a bit lazy today morning. I think it needs a bit of caffeine, but that's all right. So now I've already selected the technician here. Now, when I hit generate, what happens here is, all right, so let's take a look at the groups that the user has. Now, if I go back to Active Directory and open up the properties, let me count the groups real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Help desk-us account. Open up AD Manager. I don't have 5 groups. I have more. If you take a look at the count here, I have 10 groups. So 5 additional groups. Now, please take a look at this, okay? Now, the VPN access group that you see here, the one that I've highlighted, This is a direct group, okay? But if you go to this report, the VPN access group here is in turn a member of application admins, and it has domain admins too. And if you take a look at domain admins has denied RODC password replication group, and one of the more powerful group in Active Directory, administrators. All right. Now, if the administrators had a few other group memberships, all right, I wish you the best of luck. Okay. So this is how a nesting can get things complicated for you. So you might be under the assumption that you have 5 complete administrators in your organization, but in reality, if this is the nesting, then you might have more than 5 administrators for sure. Okay. So one thing, find these out. Just go ahead and select these check boxes and remove the inappropriate members that you think should not be part of this helpless technician. All right. This is the investigative approach. Now, how do you perform a general health check? I'm not going to do this on a daily basis, but how do you perform a health check is something that you can do once in every 10 days. Just spend 60 seconds of your time. Okay. So I go to group reports here. We have a dedicated category just for groups. And I go to the second report, which is detailed group members. And when I go to detailed group members here, all right, now I'm not saying just go ahead and pick all the groups that you have. Pick the sensitive ones. That's my point here. Okay, domain admins, schema admins, enterprise admins. Go ahead. Okay, so now I have selected domain admins here, and just take a look at this report, please. Okay, what does this report fetch? You can exclude nested groups, but I wouldn't do that. Okay, I'd like to know the entirety of the situation. So I select domain admins, and I'd like to know the users belonging to domain admins, groups, computers, contacts. Any object that has any contact with domain admins, I need a report. Okay, so I have 9 users here. I move to the next tab, the most important tab of all, groups tab. Okay. I need to see whether my domain admins is talking to my HR group. I need to see whether my domain admins is connected to any such basic group by mistake. So, domain admins, you have intern basic access. Oh my God. Why is an intern basic access group linked to domain admins? So any user I add to this group who should be an intern, by mistake will be a domain admin now. And any user that I add to the VPN access group will be a domain admin too. No, strict no. I'll just go ahead and wipe it out immediately, all right? So this is a general health check. Just go ahead and select any group you want, enterprise, domain admins, application admin groups. The custom groups that you have created, you get the answers. All right, that's it. That's enough for group. Now, shared folders. All of you have shared folders, I believe. That was stupid. All of you have shared folders. Yes, of course, you do. Now, the problem is, if you're the only administrator in your organization, you are safe. You need not worry about this, okay? If you're not the only administrator in your organization, and especially you have confidential shares, you need to do things. Review the permissions on, let's say, once in every 10 days or 15 days, just to see whether everything is in place according to your description. If you don't find things are right in step 1 after you review, you need to perform step 2, which is cleanup. All right? Review and cleanup. Review and cleanup when you have confidential folders. Now, if I try to review and clean up the Microsoft way, I open up a shared folder, review. Okay. How do I review the Microsoft way? I do a right click, I do properties, I go to security, hoping to see only my entry there. Good. Not good. Not good at all. Okay. Maybe another administrator who has access to this folder has by mistake manipulated the permission on this folder. Now everyone have access to this piece of information. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You know why? There you go. If you open up these folders, I have another 5 folders each inside these folders, okay? Now, the best part here is, okay, I'm just being a bit sarcastic here. That's not the best part. The worst part here is the permission that you see on corp data, the folder here, could be different for these folders, because these folders, either can inherit permission from corp data, or they can have their own set of permissions. That's by default. That's folder inheritance. That's the way Microsoft works. All right. So the only way now is I need to review permissions on every folder. Properties, security. Right click, properties, security. Okay. All right. We are not getting paid by the hour to do this. So what is the easy way of reviewing and cleaning up permissions? We still need to do these, right? Review and clean up. All right. So we thought, okay, let's make things a bit easier for administrators. So, all right, the folder that we're talking about is corp data. Let's review corp data now. Okay, I go to reports. After I go to reports, okay, it's taking its own sweet time. I'm sorry, my system, as I said, has been a bit lazy since this morning. Okay, I go to reports. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I am trying to verify the permission, NTFS permission on a folder. So I go to NTFS reports. You see the second report here, permissions for folders. Yes, this is where we go to review corp data. Permissions for folders, right? Now, when you go to permissions for folders, I mean, I've already done this, so you should be seeing corp data here. So you select corp data. The best part is the second step. So you have no idea whether corp data has 5 subfolders or 50 subfolders because you do not know. So to be on the safer side, you go with all subfolders and you hit generate. Now, when you do generate, you get the list of permissions that the users have or the groups have on corp data in its entirety. And that includes inheritance too. If you just go to advanced here, you could see this. So this is corp data, and this is the folder beneath corp data, which is assets. And this is again another folder, insurance. All this is under the parent folder called corp data, and you know what type of control users have. You know you have whether it's a full control or just a read access, whether it drills down to all the subfolders, whether inheritance is set to false or true. Now, this is a complete review process. Okay, I told you we need to do 2 things here, review and clean up. Now, how do you clean up? If that's your question, I have answers in the next tab. So you just go to AD to perform step number 2, which is clean up, and you go to File Server Management, and you go to Modify NTFS Permissions. All right. So when we're trying to modify the permissions on an existing folder here. So yeah, that's where I go. And let me tell you something here. Okay. Microsoft might have introduced billion-dollar technologies, but that did not impress me. But what impressed me from Microsoft is the copy and paste feature. Yes, you heard me right, the copy and paste, right? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to select a folder that I'm going to clean up. In our case, it's the corp data folder, and I'll show you something very interesting here. So I select corp data. You see this, corp data. I hit OK. Now, if you have another folder with the exact permissions that you want, you can very well copy the permissions on the perfect folder and paste it on corp data. That's what I mean by copy and paste, right? So you go to copy from folder. You select the server. You see this? I have corp data and its backup right below. So you select the backup. Now, a very important piece of advice here. Okay, when you select a folder, you need to select not just the parent folder, but also the ones within it. Okay, which means I'm talking about inherited permissions. So I do include inherited permissions. I hit OK. There you go. Right? I did not define the permissions manually because I think copying and pasting would be much more effective and uniform. So I've done that. But I've still not done a very important step, which is cleanup. Okay? I have reviewed permissions through the reports tab. I have now pasted permissions here, but I've still not performed that cleanup of the existing permissions on the folder. I'm not going to be doing it one by one because I have close to 200 entries on that folder. Nope, nope, nope. So the second checkbox here, remove all existing permissions and apply only the above permissions. Okay, I select this, I hit OK, and the minute I hit modify, okay, administrators would always be a bit skeptical. So it's good to have a quick preview. Okay, if you just scroll down, you can see what was the existing permission, what is the modified permission. And if you just hit view all changes, you get the entire list. And after you feel that, okay, what I'm about to do is exactly the changes that I want, you can then hit modify, right? So this is how you clean up permissions on folders, review and cleanup. All right. Step or report number 3. Please, please, please do this report, okay? Because we create users in Active Directory, but I'm not quite sure how many of us go back to Active Directory and check whether those users have logged in or not. If it's not the case, there might be a problem, okay? Especially if this is the case, okay? Because I've seen, I'm not saying all, okay? All right, I'm not blaming anyone here. Don't get me wrong. I did this, which means I assume that at least another person in the world would have the same habit too, okay? I'm not blaming all the administrators. So when you create 5 user accounts today morning, all 5 of them would have the same attribute. And that attribute is the password attribute, okay? So if I create the HR, vendor, and IT staff, I just create them with common passwords first, and then I enable a small check flag which reads, force user to change password at next logon. And then after the user types in the username and password at 123, which is a very powerful password in 2004. Okay, so after I type the password, then I get a pop-up, change your password, right? Now, why do I want you to look out for never logged on users? If that's your question, I have answers for you. Now just take a look at this. Okay, I have the HR account that I created, I have the vendor account, IT staff. All of them have common passwords for the first time. The problem here is the users have never logged in. That's common for all these 3 accounts. Did not log in even once, did not log in, did not log in. But out of these 3 accounts, the HR is vulnerable, the IT staff is vulnerable. If I were to talk in terms of attacking your Windows credential, I would call these 2 accounts the bookmark accounts. Only the vendor is safe. You know why? Just look at the when created date. The users have never logged in, and they were created sometime in Jan 2018. This user, the HR. And the IT staff has never logged in, but when was the user created? 1st of August 2017, right? But the vendor has never logged in too, but when was the account created? Yesterday, right? So if I were to attack your Active Directory infrastructure after doing a simple PowerShell, I know that the HR has never logged in because the last log on, the attribute that you see here, which denotes the logon time of the user, if it reads 0, if it does not have a value here, which means the user has not performed an AD authentication, okay? Now, please hear me right. I'm just referring to the AD authentication here. There are 9 types of logons for accounts, all right? So I'm not talking about all of them. I'm just talking about the AD authentication here, the interactive logon. Only then this gets updated. Now, if it reads 0, all right, which means the user has never logged on. And then I check for, as an attacker, I check for the when created date. I will not touch this account. Chances are the user might log in tomorrow, okay? I would wait for some more time to bookmark this account. But I've happily bookmarked the account for HR and the account for the IT staff. And I, through, let's say, password spraying or let's say I actually crack the password using n number of methods that are available out there, I know you're using a common password, okay, which is weak, which is password at 123, okay. So if I get hold of one password, I silently wait for the right time to initiate my attack. So that's why I tell you it's highly important for you to understand when did a user last log in, okay? And a tip, whenever you look for the last logon time of user, if you just depend on one server, you log into one server, let's say this is Vivin, you open up Vivin's property, check the last logon and timestamp, you note that these 2 are different because last logon does not replicate, the timestamp replicates to all servers. Now, if you are under the impression, all right, I'll just go with timestamp, so I need not log into every server, I'm afraid, my friend, you're wrong. The reason is the timestamp replicates to other domain controllers, but it doesn't replicate in real time. By default, it replicates once in every 14 days, okay, unless you have changed it. So the only way now is you should not be depending on one server. You should log into every server and look at the last log on, not the timestamp, the last log on every server that you have in your infrastructure. That's something, a piece of information that most of the administrators tend to overlook. Okay, so last log on in every server. Please see which one is the latest. If all the servers record the last login as 0, now the user has clearly never logged on. How do you make this simple? Go. AD Manager Plus comes to your rescue. Go to reports. Okay. Again, go to user reports here. We have a specific category just for the users. All right. Okay. So I go to user reports. Users never logged on. There you go. The last but one. Users never logged on. Again, this is a multi-server report or a multi-DC report because you cannot depend on just one server. For consistency reasons, you should be querying all of them. So after you generate the report, you get what you need, right? So I have 45 users who have never logged in. I've created them, but they've never logged in because the last logon time reads 0, not just in one server, in all the servers. Now, what I'm interested in is I need to know when they were created, and if they were created any time before a month or before 15 days, I need to make sure that the account status of those accounts are disabled. I see some of the enabled accounts here. If this user has no other forms of authentication enabled in your infrastructure, email, Office 365, whatever it is, please go ahead and disable the accounts immediately, right? This is exactly what I'm referring to when I say securing your infrastructure. Okay, so please, I hope that these tips are kind of helpful to you. So please go ahead and do a multi-DC report whenever you'd like to clean up things. All right, let me move on to the second chapter here. Don't worry, you can stay with me. Another 10 more minutes, we'll wrap this up. So now what we are going to do here is we are going to be talking about something really interesting here in terms of managing objects. Okay. Now, if you have deployed Active Directory for more than a year, in the sense, if your organization has been running in the market for more than a year, and that too has Active Directory, chances are your Active Directory has some manual entries over the years. Okay. Now, with too many manual entries in place, if it's a 10-year company or a 15-year company, and if you had Active Directory for those many years, when you had too many manual entries, there are chances for inconsistency. That's when the case of two users belonging to the same department have different set of permissions. Okay, because a user suddenly calls you and says, hey, I need access to that application. You add them to a group. But the problem is it's not always in adding users to a group. It's always revoking the access, timely access. Okay, so how do you create some sort of standardization? What is the solution that we offer? Okay, so when you create accounts or when you modify accounts or when you deprovision accounts, there has to be some sort of standardization. That's one solution. Okay, and you also have to understand the existing I'm sorry, excuse me for this word, but this is literally what it is, okay? The existing problem, and then think of standardizing when modifying accounts. So provisioning accounts and modifying accounts. So how do we help? So we have processes for creation, modification, and deletion. And the process for creation is achieved through something called templates right here inside of AD Manager Plus. Now think of it like this. I told you the most favorite feature according to me from Microsoft is copy user. Okay, so if this is a help desk technician, IDHTT. Let's say there's another help desk technician. You're recruiting for the IT department. Okay, and you want the same properties for the user. Microsoft has this feature called copy. You see this? So when you hit copy, all you need to do is just type in the first name, last name of the new user account, and then you just go ahead with the creation of that account. So you would have a new IT technician with the exact properties of this user. That includes member of, sessions, and all the things that you see here. Okay. Now, why do we do that? Because when if you feel that when you copy an existing technician, and when this technician when the source is good. How many copies you make out of it, it doesn't matter, but all those copies are going to be legit. All those copies are going to be uniform. So you don't have two users belonging to the same department having different permissions anymore. Now, we have used this principle of copy, but we have done that a bit different. We have something called copy user attributes that allow you to create a template. Okay, a template that includes something that you wouldn't find in the ADUC, which is the Exchange, remote mailbox. You have Office 365, G Suite. All right, so you can pretty much copy. I'm not saying that you can copy all of them, but you can copy at least 90% of the stuff that you see here in this using the copy user attributes and create a template. You're not creating a user, you're creating a template. And can this layout be customized? Because in most of the organizations, I understand that it's the HR who initiates the user creation process. So you better not hand a layout that has Exchange and Office 365 to your HR. All the HR needs is a simple form like this. Maybe first name, last name. You can rename these attributes if you want. First name, last name, title, department. That's it. Nothing extra. Just give them few fields, because when you complicate life for the HR, they complicate life for you. Okay. So in order for you to be a bit nice to your HR, you transform something like this to this. Make all the other fields silently active. All the fields are here, but not for the HR. Okay. As and when the HR types in first name, last name, and the department is IT, now this template has something called dynamic rules. If you had noticed in my previous deck, oh, I'm sorry, fat fingers, excuse me for that. So if you had noticed something called enable drag and drop here and creation rules have something called dynamic rules. Okay, so if I select the department to be IT, the user would have certain set of properties in all these fields. If I select the department to be marketing or sales, then there's going to be a different set of properties. So this way, if the HR is going to type the field as IT, all the fields that are hidden here will get auto-populated to something different, okay? And you can also perform a forest-wide check, okay? So even if I type the logon name to be something like, James Bond, and if you have James Bond already in your organization, now this is going to tell you an account with the same name already exists. So this is not going to tell you after it's attempted. This would tell you the minute you key in the name here, okay? That's called validation. You do all this, and you simply have to type the first name and last name, or your HR has to type in the first name and last name every time you recruit a new user to your organization, all right? Now, what are the other benefits? Because this is very basic. Creating a template like this and using it every time you recruit employees is very basic. Even though this goes a long way in doing everything in one stretch, that includes Office 365 and all the licenses associated to it. But what I'm saying is this can do a lot more if you create a template. Let me show you something here. If you have one template in place for user provisioning, okay, you can very well integrate the template or integrate AD Manager Plus as such with some of the ITIL tools out there in the market. So Service Desk Plus is an ITIL offering from Manage Engine. So this is the console of Service Desk, not AD Manager, Service Desk, okay? Now, after integrating AD Manager Plus with the Service Desk, the help desk technicians who log into the tool to raise a ticket, all right, they get additional Active Directory options, completely customizable, okay? So these options are going to be really helpful for the technician to get things done in Active Directory. And if it's ServiceNow, the ServiceNow console would have additional Active Directory options after you integrate AD Manager Plus to it. And is the integration going to take or require a lot of expertise? No. If you have 5 minutes of your time, it's just a basic API call and just specifying the server number, the name of the server, the port, and the IP address. That's it to integrate. All right, topic number 3, automation. And I have taken the example of cleanup here, okay? Now, please watch out for this. In real world, when you automate something, it goes perfectly. But in reality, there are chances for things to go terribly wrong. Okay? So what I'm trying to say here is when you automate stuff in your Active Directory infrastructure, please, please, please make sure that your automation is a bit controlled. Okay? Let me tell you something here. You can automate some of the major routines that you want inside of Active Directory. Let me give you a very basic example. Now, first of all, why should you automate process? Automation brings in uniformity, saves a lot of time, and automation also helps you enhance security. Okay? When you're using automation to perform an Active Directory cleanup, it enhances security. And if you have purchased licenses in your organization, be it for any application, that are licensed based on the number of users using it, you better be paying only for the active users and not for the inactive ones. Computers, you might have computer objects that have not authenticated or that are stale for more than 6 months, right? Oh, the last one, groups without any members in them. You have temp groups, you have test groups, you have GPOs that are unused. You created a GPO sometime in 2009, and it has not been touched ever since then, but it's sitting there happily with all the 1,500 settings inside your infrastructure. And I'm sorry to say some of those GPOs in some of your organizations can be linked to very crucial parts, something like a domain inside an organization, all right? But it's inactive. So how do you automate all this? How do you automate cleanup? How do you automate provisioning of accounts? All right? Log into AD Manager Plus, go to the automation part, choose the action that you'd like to automate. If it's creating users, yes. If it's cleaning up Active Directory, yes. Okay? So this is how creation looks like. Tell the automation to go to a SQL server, go to your HR application, get the user details from there, automate the entire process, have all those accounts ready in O365 Exchange, G Suite, or whatever it is. By 9 o'clock tomorrow, you have the accounts there on all these platforms. Okay? Tell the automation to clean up stuff once in every 45 days or once in every 90 days. The automation finds inactive computers, inactive users, inactive GPUs, groups. It can do the actions that you have specified in a sequence. Okay? So be it Active Directory, be it revoking a license, or be it deleting a mailbox. Let me show you something interesting here. Okay? So if you just go to AD Manager Plus, I was talking about this tab here, automation, but I'd also like to show you something. If you just go to the admin tab, I'm just going to quickly show you the things that we can achieve through disabling or while disabling and deleting accounts. So if you just go to the admin tab, you have something called disable and delete policy right here. So you just go to the disable and delete policy, and you can decide what the application should do when it disables accounts or when it deletes accounts in AD. What are the other actions? What are the chain actions? So you have delete policy and disable policy here. So if you just scroll down, and if you just take a look at other tasks here, so while deleting, I want all this to be done. And if there is something that you don't find here, you always have the ability to run a custom script, okay? Maybe taking care of other applications. If you go to disable policy, you can pick and choose these many actions, all right? That includes revoking the Office 365 user license, converting an O365 mailbox to shared mailbox, remove all O365 groups, and also resetting password for the account while it's being disabled. All right? So all this can be achieved automatically. Now, remember this. Things can go wrong when you automate stuff in Active Directory. So we need to be prepared for that. So while creating an automation, you have to do a simple checkbox, okay? Now, this example or this screenshot says policy for removing inactive computers and users, okay? Or sorry, inactive users. Now, I don't want the automation to simply delete or disable accounts without my approval. This is called controlled automation. So I select this checkbox here, which means the automation will do everything else except for disabling and deleting users. It would simply send a notification to me with, let's say, the list of users that are about to be disabled or deleted. I go through the list. If I feel that the list is valid, I hit execute, and then the accounts get disabled or deleted in Active Directory. All right. So this is what I meant by controlled automation. Supervise and execute by selecting a simple checkbox right here. All right. When you sit in a tech sessions for more than 45 minutes, at least I get a bit dizzy, and I'm in need of caffeine. So if you are with me, please stay with me for another 5 minutes because we are nearing the end of the session here. All right. My last part here is about delegation. So how do you perform a non-intrusive delegation without actually elevating the user's right in AD or Office 365? Let me quickly share something here. Okay. You all know this. If you have Office 365 in your infrastructure, permissions are assigned to users in one common way, and one common methodology in all 365 is something called roles. So if you hold a role inside of Office 365, then you hold the roles rights. Okay, it's something like groups. So if you are the global administrator, and by the way, global admins are the only admins who can assign other admin roles. This is directly from the Microsoft site. If you just go to TechNet, you get this piece. Okay. All right. Assigning role is okay for me, but the second slide here clearly explains something really, really glaring, and that is the roles are not precise. The roles have overlapping set of permissions. I don't call it overlapping, or I would simply call it confusing. Right? It's a bit too much. Let me tell you why. Now, please take a look at this example. Now, user management administrator is a role inside of Office 365. Okay, global administrator is a role. User management administrator is a role. Okay. Now, user management administrator can do some things inside of Active Directory. Now, please watch out for the one that I've highlighted in red. Now, please look at this. Someone with both Exchange admin role and the user management role can create and manage Office 365 groups in the Office 365 Admin Center. So I need the Exchange admin role. So if I talk about the Exchange admin role, I would be under the assumption if I have something to do with Exchange admin, both online or on-prem, that holds good for Office 365 too. But Office 365 works in a different way. It says you need to have the Exchange admin role as well as the user management role for managing groups. All right. Now, tomorrow, I decide to give someone these two roles so that they can manage Office 365 groups. Okay. What are the other permissions that they get? If I give them the user management role, they can not only manage our O365 groups, but also reset password, monitor service health. All this is kind of okay for me, not reset password, but all this. But what is more frightening is it also allows a user to delete user accounts. All right. Now, this is something that I don't want. Why should a user, just for managing O365 groups, should have delete rights? Right? This is intrusive on the highest level. So we, in AD Manager Plus, we always believe in non-intrusive delegation. I'm not saying that do this for your admins. No. I'm saying is do this for your HR, do this for your help desk technicians. Okay? Keep the administrators to a bare minimum. Now, if you feel like, okay, I have too many admin users floating around my infrastructure, I need to keep it to a bare minimum. Now, please pay attention to this. Okay. Now, what we do here a bit different is we also do roles, but these roles are something within the application. All right. So let me actually quickly show this to you in real time so that you know what I'm talking about. So I go to AD delegation here. Now, what I've done here is when you go to delegation, I'm going to quickly show you my technician and the role that I've mapped for the technician. So the name of the technician is HR, so it's the HR user, and the role that I've mapped to this HR user is user creation. All right. Now let's quickly take a look at the user creation role. So I go to roles, help desk roles right here, and I go to something called I get the role view. I have all the roles being listed here. And you see that you have the user creation role that we have mapped to the HR. So I quickly open the user creation role. just to make sure that I've not given them any elevated rights. So once the role is open, you would see that I've just selected one checkbox here, create single user, not even users in bulk. No users in bulk. I've not given them rights to manage anything else. No reset password, no delete users, no reporting, no administration, and not even Office 365. Now, if you want Office 365, yes, you can do that too, okay? But for the purpose of this demo, I'm just being very granular. Now, I can be granular to the level of restricting attributes. So I just go to attributes here. I can even pick and choose the attributes that this role should not have control over. If I feel no exchange, I uncheck exchange, all right? So I do that and I hit OK. Now, let's quickly do this. So I save the role, all right, because I've just performed a modification here. I've removed exchange from this role. So I'm going to log in as the technician. Excuse me. So if you just take a closer look at the screen, you have Home, AD Management Reports, Office 365, all these tabs. I don't want all these tabs for my HR. I just want them to have a single user interface. You see the HR account with user creation role. So I sign out, okay, and let's do this. So I'm not signing in as the administrator here, so I'm logging in as the HR. Now, please watch out for this. I am typing my Windows credential. I'm not typing an application account here. I'm not using an application account. Okay. So this is my Windows username and Windows password, the one that I use to authenticate. So I'm switching from AD Manager Plus authentication to domain authentication. Of course, you can restrict technicians or your other folks in the organization using this from switching. If you want them to just use domain authentication, yes, you can even do that. So if I remember my password right for the HR account, I'll be able to log into the console. All right. All right. It looks like the password was right. So I typed in my Windows credential. Now I'm a HR. Please note, now I'm a HR. Now, please have a look at the screen. I do not have access to anything else apart from the one that I have in the role, create single user. Now, if you open up this layout here, the create single user layout, you would see something very interesting. You would not find all the tabs that you would see in a normal template. You see this? You do not have Exchange, Office 365, and all that stuff. You do not have the group membership. Just to show you, I just go to the account tab. I don't have anything else here. I don't have the groups, anything. So I just type a name. All right, let's do this here. The name of the account is going to be, the first name is Baji, and the second name is Test. Let's do Baji Test, okay? Now, think of it like this. The HR, they just type the first name and last name, and they just do the description here, okay? Now, as and when they do the description or the department as IT, you can even have this as a drop-down. So if the department is selected, the rest of the fields in the back end get auto-populated. Now, watch this, okay? Magic. So I just hit create. When you hit create, it says that the account is successfully created. I just checked the OU in which the account is supposed to be created. It's created inside the India OU. So I'm going to quickly go to my Active Directory setup here. I'm sorry, wrong screen. So I just go to my Active Directory setup. I'll look for the India OU right here. Okay. All right. I do a refresh because Microsoft and refresh are bound together. So I look for Baji Test. There you go. Baji Test. I, as a HR, just typed in the first name and last name of the user account, but you have the email populated, you have the Exchange mailbox created, the Office 365 account created, the member of, you see all the groups right here. And if you take a look at other properties too, if you just go to the attribute editor, the other properties that you want will be set as well. Okay. Now, wait a minute. We were talking about auditing all these actions, right? So where do you go to audit my actions? So I sign out, and then I log in as the administrator now because I'd like to audit the actions done by my technicians. So I log in. We're just going to see whether the action that the HR just performed, the HR created a user named Baji Test. So I'm going to see whether the tool has captured that auditing information, right? So that if someone asks me who did this, I always have an audit trail. Okay, so I go to delegation. This is where you perform all delegations, including Office 365. And when you go to the delegation tab, you have something called audit reports inside of delegation. Okay, so I clicked delegation 10 minutes ago. It's still spinning. I blame it on my computer. Sorry about that. All right, I think we are in the delegations window. All right, now in the delegation window, you have something called audit report. So you just go to the audit report here, and let's see whether we see the audit trail for the action of creating Baji test, which is the new user. There you go. Create users was done by HR, and the action was a management action. The name of the user was Baji test, and the user account was successfully created. What are the other details? I just hit details, and there you go. You have all the details right here. So you know who created the account, when was it done. So you have the audit trail in place too. This is exactly what I was talking about when I say map a role to a user, give them access to AD Manager Plus, not your servers, not the Office 365 Admin Center, not the Exchange Management Console. Give them access to the application and get things done in Active Directory, O365, and the other platforms without touching the user's permission in the native platforms. You're not adding them to groups. You're not adding them to a role in Office 365. It's just an application, right? Now, why do you do this? You do this in order to keep the permissions to a bare minimum. So you as an administrator can have all the access in AD and Office 365. But your HR, your help desk, they need not have access to servers in Office 365 to get certain things done, right? That's exactly what I was talking about, keeping track of changes. So with this session, we are nearing the end of the session here. So we discussed about 4 topics here. Reporting, how do you bring in standardization, how do you automate stuff in a controlled manner by implementing workflow, and how do you delegate actions in a non-intrusive way, right? Now, the application AD Manager Plus is a part of a larger suite called AD360. We'll be discussing a lot about this tomorrow and day after. And we have 2 broader classifications because we have been getting too many requests from administrators for bundling, for creating a bundle. So we have an IT management bundle and an IT security bundle. Just remember these 2 names, AD360 and Log360. If at all you're interested in trying out any of these, so you just go with AD360 and you have all these modules, okay? And you're just interested in purchasing this module, yes. Or you already have this module, then AD360 is for free, okay? So tomorrow, okay, so far we have discussed some interesting things. Tomorrow it's even better. Things get better as we proceed through the session. We'll be discussing about key Windows event IDs that you need to track. And I'm just going to be talking about some crucial aspects that you should be covering inside your Windows infrastructure. How do you audit your users? How do you audit policy changes? How do you watch out for crucial deletions? And tracking your domain admins, your administrators. And if there's a lockout, how do you understand the source of an account lockout? How do you know it's legitimate or not? Okay, so we'll be discussing about all these. Now, even before I end the session, okay, I have something for you. So I just have 4 basic questions to stay with me for just another 30 seconds here. So by now, I hope you should have got a pop-up in your screen. So if at all you have the application, so I would request you to just spend a couple of seconds in order to let us know whether you have the application or not. So we'd be more than we get an insight on your usage, and we'll be able to pace our presentation accordingly for tomorrow's session. All right. So the second question, I closed the first question here. Now, the second question is, are you actually even planning to evaluate the application if you're not using the application? All right. If you feel that it's worth a try, go ahead. It's just a minute of, you just need to spend 10 minutes in order to download the application and then give it a try. All right, we have some fair enough responses here. All right, we have 70% vote, which is more than fine. Let me quickly do my third question. Have you ever got in touch with our tech support? We have a dedicated tech team for all of these, not just for letting you know what the application does, but the team will also be able to help you with some of the best practices in and around of Active Directory. So we just wanted to know whether you have got in touch. Now, all these questions are not for sales pitch. We're just trying to better our process here. So yes, oh, thank you very much. We've received 90% of votes for this, which is really good. Thank you very much for your active participation. Last question, okay? I close this. My last question. Launch. All right. If you want probably an overview or demo of the application to be given to you, okay, a tailor-made one, I understand that you have a lot of questions. If you want one of our techs to be getting in touch with you in order to answer the questions and all that, let us know in the chat, right? So we'll be able to assist you accordingly. All right. Yes, I've received a lot of yeses. Thank you very much for that. We'll make sure that our tech team gets in touch with you regarding your queries, right? And also, if you need some personal attention in better managing infrastructure, yes, you'll be able to do that too. All right. So with that said, if you're more of a YouTube person, if you're more interested in listening to tech videos, free, okay? Just open up YouTube and then go to AD Solutions, no spaces. You get a playlist that has approximately 600 videos that describes everything in detail. So it's better that you watch out for this screen here, this channel, AD Solutions, right? With that said, thank you very much for your time and patience. I hope the session was informative. Please give us your feedback and talk to you tomorrow about auditing your Active Directory infrastructure, and I'll definitely get back to you with the answers for a bunch of questions that I have in hand. Thank you very much. All of you have a wonderful evening or wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.